Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another installment in our Reviewed and Ranked series. Today, we will be looking at the youngest slash newest member to the roster of playable characters in Ultimate Alliance 3. That, of course, being Spider-Gwen. And this is an interesting character because she has some very unique looking abilities and some animations that I really like for this character. But we'll get more into the details of how she works a little bit later on as we go through everything she has in her kit. As we jump into today's breakdown, here's your obligatory reminder to check and see if you are subscribed to the channel. If you're not, please fix that for me. We are less than 250 subscribers away from that 1K milestone, and it would be awesome if we can hit that before the channel's 2-year anniversary in June. So help me hit that milestone, and you'll be rewarded by daily variety content showing up in your subscription feed every single day. And as always, if you find today's video helpful and or enjoyable, make sure you hit that like button so other people can see this video as well. So starting off, we have the team build synergy layout for Spider-Gwen, and she doesn't have a whole lot of synergies, and the synergies that she does have are not particularly impressive. She has a resilience synergy with the web warriors, a mastery synergy with agile fighters, a vitality synergy with Ultimate Alliance 3, and then an energy synergy with the Women of Marvel. Now, out of the 6 different synergies that are available in the game, I personally think that the mastery, energy, and strength synergies are the better ones, especially when it comes to an offensive style, as those help you with either your overall damage output or your ability to rinse and repeat your ability and synergy type attacks. But it's not the end of the world if you are unable to max out some of those stats. It's just unfortunate that Spider-Gwen would likely not be one of the characters on your team if you're looking to stack the synergy benefits in your favor for one of those categories. Moving over to the base abilities that Spider-Gwen possesses, her standard attack sequence has a 5-hit combo series, and of course there's always the benefit of having attacks that make physical contact with your opponents, being able to discourage them from retaliating against you, especially if they're the smaller grunt type enemies. So that is certainly a point in Spider-Gwen's favor, with that final kick having some more exaggerated knockback against those grunt type characters as well. She, like everyone else on the cast, does kind of progress forward as she makes those hits, with the exception being a couple of the projectile using characters that will retreat as they're using their basic combo. But that's not really something that breaks this character by any means. The heavy attack for Spider-Gwen is actually one that I haven't seen this particular animation style used in the cast that we've looked at so far, as she will kind of use a sliding tackle as she lunges forward and takes a lower trajectory against the opponents that are directly out in front of her. Unfortunately, it's not the strongest heavy attack out of the cast of characters. I don't see it dealing massive amounts of damage to the stagger meters for the mighty enemies or the mini boss characters, so you probably won't find yourself using this heavy attack a lot, but it does serve as an alternative for a get out of jail free card if you are low on your energy points and cannot use an ability or synergy to free yourself from the onslaught of opponents in her area. Spider-Gwen, being a Spider-Verse hero, does have the web sling ability that activates off of her jump rather than a double jump type maneuver. She could technically have gotten away with having a teleport, but because again she fits into the web warrior category, it makes a lot more sense for her to have a web sling traversal mechanic employed into her character kit. And as a reminder, any character that has a traversal ability of this caliber will consume some of their energy points as they sling around the battlefield, so just don't abuse this mechanic, and you should be fine when it comes to actually getting into a round of some confrontation. But it is a very fluid and nice feeling animation with all of the characters that have that web sling, so props to the development team for the design on this one. Spider-Gwen's falling aerial looks very similar to the one that we saw off of Miles Morales, where she will, upon being airborne, shoot 2 web lines down to the ground and then forcibly pull herself down for a spherical area of contact or impact down on the ground. Of course, the better damage application of that coming from the initial point of impact, but the encompassing area will have damage dealt and will deal knockback to the smaller grunt type enemies as well. And the final aesthetic we have is the block and dodge animation. Of course, Spider-Gwen will cross her arms out in front of her to brace herself against incoming blows, and as she dodges out of the way, she does so with a very standard somersault in the direction of input away from the oncoming attacks. So let's switch over and talk a little bit about the abilities that Spider-Gwen possesses. Fortunately, she does have abilities that will synergize with the rest of the team, and that certainly bumps her a couple of rungs up on this ladder, where they're all decent in terms of what they bring to the table for damage and versatility. The first ability is the Catchy attack name, and this is a series of web blasts that distribute in a fan type area out in front of where the character is facing. And you can spam this attack by repeatedly pressing the button, and if it comes in contact with different opponents, it does have the ability to bind them and render them more vulnerable to attacks from the rest of your teammates. This is actually one of the better bind abilities in my opinion, as it does come out very quickly and you can rinse and repeat this attack over and over again without having to wait for lengthy animations to play out before the characters are actually latched onto. I'm thinking more specifically of the bands of Sidorak that are used by Doctor Strange, as those has a fairly lengthy animation before they actually latch onto opponents to render them immobile and more vulnerable to attacks from the opponents. So that is 1 point in the favor of this ability, though it does of course suffer in the staggered damage category, which doesn't matter a whole lot because when a character is finally bound, it does make an exemption for whatever stagger gauge they did have, and they will have to struggle or have a struggling time to free themselves from those web blasts. So even though it doesn't directly deal stagger damage, it does have a negating property to that as well. So you can kind of sort of disregard the F classification that is on that stagger damage. But it does maintain that standard middle of the pack C classification in the standard damage dealt, as well as the energy points consumed. This attack is of the projectile type and possesses the rapid fire synergy trait, and as this ability is leveled up, it benefits from a reduced energy point cost and increase to the attack damage dealt, an increased efficiency to the binding abilities that it possesses, and finally that reduced chance of the attack being interrupted. Spider-Gwen's second ability is the Legit Beatdown, and this is a more encompassing damage type ability that takes place right around where Spider-Gwen is located. This involves swinging a giant ball of webbing around in a circle, hitting enemies around her in her immediate vicinity, and then she will launch the ball out in front of her, and the landing site does deal additional damage. So it does have the double-edged benefit of dealing damage up close and dealing damage from afar with its final detonation, again, provided that there are enemies in the area where the web ball lands and deals that final blow. And it's got the very consistent damage classifications of C to both standard damage and stagger damage, and maintaining that C classification to the energy point consumption as well. This attack has the melee attack type, which is interesting, though it does make sense that it was given the melee attack type because the area assault tends to be a series of attacks within a circular type area, where this is just one circle or one loop that is made with the ball of webbing before it is launched away. So it has its discrepancies, but is the most fitting option based off what attack types we have to work with as a whole. It has the Bash Synergy trait, and benefits from a rank up bonus of reduced energy point cost, increased attack damage, increased damage done to the stagger gauge, and finally a reduced chance of the attack being interrupted. And these same benefits is what is consistent across the remaining abilities in Spider-Gwen's kit as the abilities are leveled up. Ability number 3 is the Disappearing Act, and we've seen variations on this type of attack. It is important to note that the timer that you have to release the attack is shorter than what we've seen from some of the other characters in this kit, and it doesn't seem to have nearly as far of a range as some of the other abilities from characters such as Nightcrawler, from what we have explored up until this point. Will involve Spider-Gwen warping into the air to whatever area is specified by the reticle that you can use to position this character, and then she attacks with a heal drop that does have a shockwave circular area of impact wherever she does end up landing. If you use this attack in a synergy type setting, she doesn't frequently course correct or move that reticle. Instead, she will just kind of slam down somewhere nearby where she already is, so don't expect this ability to teleport her all the way across the arena to help you out with where you're at if you are controlling a different character, but it is a decent ability nonetheless in terms of what she is able to use, though it does suffer a little bit in practicality, as if you use it as a standard ability, you are quite vulnerable as you are aiming this attack. And it also maintains the C classification to damage, stagger damage, and energy point consumption, while maintaining a melee attack type and a slam synergy trait. The final ability for Spider-Gwen is Swing Time, and this involves Spider-Gwen anchoring a webbing to the center of a circular area nearby her character before she uses her momentum to swing around repeatedly in a circle around that anchor point. You can continue to use this attack by repeatedly pressing the button, and she will continue to swing around quite aggressively in that area of influence, maintaining the melee attack type, and this one does have that area assault characteristic, again because it is multiple strikes within that same area. Though the drawback for this ability compared to some of the other area assaults we've seen is she does remain stationary, whereas other area assaults we've seen as kind of a lunge in a straight line trajectory as the hero makes their way across the battlefield. So there is a bit of a trade-off for that, and isn't quite as beneficial in damage as some of the other area assault type abilities that we've seen up to this point, where it has the C classification to damage, stagger damage, and energy points consumed. And finally, we have Spider-Gwen's Extreme ability, and this one is similar to what we saw with the very first character in this series, being Black Panther, as she will teleport in and around a centralized area directly in front of or around the character. She doesn't do a lot of course correction, but this ability does have a decently large area of influence when it is being used, and is concluded in just under a 5-second time frame. So the words of caution with this is make sure that you have Spider-Gwen in a general area of the enemies that you are wanting to unleash her upon, but don't expect her to course correct or move around or reposition, as we've seen as a benefit for some of the other characters in the cast. So it's time to address where Spider-Gwen belongs in the tier list of characters as we've been analyzing them throughout this series. And she is not the greatest character in the game, but she does offer some application to a team build, at least from the ability to be able to synergize all of her different abilities, though she does have some lackluster damage across her kit as a whole. That being said, she does seem to be more useful than some of the characters that we've seen on the bottom end of this roster, particularly with characters like Drax and Doctor Strange. She has more hits in her combo, and her abilities are just a little bit more reliable as a whole. So I will go ahead and place Spider-Gwen in the B tier list of characters, and I feel like she rounds out the bottom of the characters that we currently have listed within this section, as characters such as Falcon and Deadpool and Iron Man do provide a little bit more versatility and damage output comparatively to what Spider-Gwen brings to the table. But what do you think? Do you think that I've undersold her or hyped her up too much? Be sure to let me know in the comments down below. And as always, make sure that you leave a like on the video if you enjoyed today's breakdown for this character. We'll be back next week with another character rank and review segment, and make sure that you check the description of the video to follow me on Twitch and on Twitter as well. So thanks again for your time, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day.